So in the previous video, I discussed the concept of a false consciousness and its general history and prevalence in psychology and overall in culture. So we discussed this thing of how intellectual endeavor in human societies is really like more of a social role play rather than investigation and science. And as an example, I provide this famous case of Aristotle writing about women having less teeth than men, which is evidently preposterous, and then this belief being kept and held by his great philosopher and his disciples, despite being obviously preposterous because nobody actually bothered to check whether or not it was true. It's like it's a self-serving system where people just repeat things to each other, and then they follow along without ever questioning. And more specifically, we discussed also in anthropology the concept of armchair anthropology, where a similar thing happens in anthropology, specifically, particularly in the early days. You would have people sitting in their armchairs, hence the term, and inventing theories about populations they never met, and writing books about how these people will think and behave, and it was completely based on just one person sitting there and being too entitled, having their own theories in mind. And in psychology, it is something that is very common, and I discussed extensively elsewhere. And it's the obvious case, although it's not the only one, is Freud with his, the method of analyzing people, where you would basically ignore what they say, because you don't really need to bother, because people are repressing their real thoughts anyway, and they need me to tell them how they really feel because they are just in denial. So when they tell you something, you just sit there being so mighty and so entitled, and they just, no, I don't really care what you say because I know already better than you what you think and feel. So, and again, this is this social role play of how basically the patient's role there in the role play is, oh wow, thanks you, I feel so enlightened and now everything is better. And if that doesn't happen, it's actually that nobody cares, because it's actually a problem of the patient, who is, oh well, you're weird, and you're not following the script, so obviously something wrong with you, so go fuck yourself, and that's about it. So let's bring autism into the discussion. So the thing is, and this is actually very personal for me, because it's I've written about false consciousness and how it affects psychology for years, without ever realizing that I was autistic, and that this happens very much when it comes to autism. So the thing is, how I realized I'm autistic. It's not like it came all of a sudden. I had some sense of I'm probably on the spectrum in some ways, and I was familiar about what psychologists say about, okay, what it looks like to be on the spectrum. I had this media TV representation of what it is to be autistic, like the characters like Sheldon Cooper from the Big Bang Theory, and or the Dustin Hoffman in the Rain Man movie, and things like that. I had heard some people, friends and family, who had like a child, a spouse, and somebody who was autistic, and I heard their description of what an autistic person looks like. And I've heard some activist campaigns like Autism Speak, and people trying to spread awareness about what it is to be autistic, how autistic people behave, and things like that. I've done some of the normally used tests to diagnose autism, and it was like, okay, so all of that was somehow relatable at a somehow superficial level, and it was like, I do see some mild expression of something kind of similar, but it just never really felt, oh, that's me. And so the thing is, it just never really appealed to me, and I never get a diagnosis or anything. I've never, it was not my main line of interest, even within psychology. My main interest have been something else, and never just felt it was particularly something relevant to me. And I have done some tests, and there was like some mild version of autism, and then it just didn't really suited myself. And then a sudden realization came to me that and this actually came through somebody who is quite close to me, and who I know for sure she cares about me, and however has been I felt was really misunderstanding me, and on at some levels kind of been quite actually belittling and humiliating, even, I'd say, the way she talked to me. And so I've done something a little bit radical, trying to solve this a bit uncomfortable situation. And knowing she has been suggesting that I'm autistic, and she has familiarity with some autistic people who, which she described to me. And again, I had this sense, I do sense some similarity there, and but not really, just that's just not me. So again, I couldn't really relate. And she's also somebody who has psychological knowledge, so she's a certified professional, and so she's a professional in the field, and one who is quite mainstream, so supporting all this, social status based psychology and false consciousness psychology. And we had, hundreds of debates on how much we disagree on this. So anyway, having this really real discomfort sense of not feeling heard and understood, and sometimes feeling like misrepresented and talked down in a kind of belittling and frankly annoying way. My normal response, particularly as an autistic person, which now I realize we do have very high sense of inner congruence and consistencies of if something just is not precise. We do have this need to, expressing things quite precisely, and if it's not precise, we get pissed off. So the normal reaction, and this causing a lot of miscommunication, was like, she telling me things about myself, and I'm getting like quite pissed off and try to correct her, because I feel, no, you're misrepresenting. This is who I am, and this whole false consciousness analysis and projection and dismissal, which felt super annoying. But I decided to do one thing. So take my critical thinking hat off, and just analyze and listen in return, in a way. So I was like, instead of trying to correct and discuss, I just basically shut down from the conversation, and I was okay, inquiring on, okay, analyze me. What do you think I feel and think about this thing? Describe the way I act and think about this. Tell me, who do you think I am in regard to this? And it suddenly hit me that all the time I had this reading about what autistic people look like, how autistic people are described, how friends, family, relative, teachers, therapists of autistic people describe autistic people, never felt relatable to me. Whereas I felt, yeah, there is like some very shallow similarity, but that's not me. Once I heard her talk about me, I was like, oh, I also feel like there is some vague resemblance here, but this is totally not me. So I realized, wait a second, is there something going on here? Is it so that autistic people actually are not at all the way they are normally represented and described, and that the way that autistic people are described is actually psychologists doing this whole armchair theory, false consciousness theory, where they talk to an autistic person and they will be like, oh, I really can't be bothered by listening what you say and just sit here and make up my own theories about who you think, who you are, how you behave, why you behave that way, and so on. So I've done something radical in a way. Instead of the usual round of, okay, going to Google up, what does it mean to be autistic, how autistic people look like, okay, what are examples of autistic people in the movies and things like that, which will only lead to actually content made by neurotypical people. And if it's not familiar, neurotypical will be a description of how a normal person behave as opposed to the autistic person. So this was all content written by neurotypical people who and apparently had not really ever asked and listened to what autistic people were saying. So what I tried to do, I don't remember now and anymore the exact line I googled up, but there was okay. So some of these things that I've told my entire life to my teachers, my therapists, my family, my friends, my lovers, everyone basically in my life. I always said and always been dismissed, belittled, never listened to. I've tried to Google up. Okay, do autistic people feel this? Do autistic people say this? And I don't remember the exact line nowadays. I think it was like something. It was something relative to the concept, which I later discovered is called autistic masking, and I discuss elsewhere. But anyways, it was something on the line of, oh, do autistic people think and say something that I've been saying my whole life, and trying to see, okay, let's see what happens. And it blew my mind. Suddenly, over a weekend, I went basically from, oh my god, I'm basically an alien. I just feel in a way which is wrong. I think in a way which is wrong. I just have to shut up. This is what masking is. Autistic people call this masking because it's this constant repression of what you think, what you feel, how you feel you're acting in order to fit neurotypical society. And so this is called masking. It's something I've always had to do basically, and I realized that. So I've been writing about some questions about, okay, how autistic people actually feel about this, and I was mind blown because all of a sudden, because of this masking, which turns out actually most autistic people do, and most autistic people have severe long-term mental health issues as a consequence of masking, and a lot of them do that their whole entire life, and so by just by 1 second of googling up why autistic people say this, why autistic people feel this, I suddenly went to feeling like, okay, I'm alien. I just constantly need to suppress what I think and what I feel in order to not have the neurotypicals freak out because, oh my goodness, you're weird and something is happening, and they just freak out so badly, and they judge you and they belittle you, and or even simply, even if they care, they just dismiss you and treat you like a 5-year-old child, and they don't listen, and they say, oh, you say this, so this means that you actually are and like, no, I said this because I mean this, and they will be building this false consciousness thing. So, oh, but then you mean this and this, and you actually don't see the problem with this, and now we educate you about how to be more normal, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, just you just learn to shut up and basically please them and whatever. Don't worry too much about not having them freaking out, and that kind of becomes your social life. Oh, let me worry about not letting myself leak out because people will freak out so badly if they see. So that kind of becomes everything you do. And just by writing, okay, do autistic people say these, or how autistic people feel when they we tell them these, or something like that. And I discovered the concept of autistic masking. I discovered, I mean, I found it online, and it blew my mind because I went from, oh, there is literally not one person in my life who ever bothered to shut up and listen to what I was saying instead of, I had people talking on to me and talking to me, not talking with me, as in, oh, this is what I think, what do you think? It's always been, oh, this is what I think, and I'm like, oh, that's quite a cool. And I'm trying to I start to say what I think, and they're like, no, 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 this is what you think is this, and like, okay, whatever. So basically, feeling like, okay, I'm an alien, I'm on the wrong planet, which is an expression autistic people oftentimes hear and use. I found out, and suddenly I was like flooded with. I searched up autistic mask and I was flooded with content of hundreds of videos with thousands of viewers, thousands of comments made not by neurotypical people telling about how autistic people are, have a disorder and how we can fix them, and how they are like basically 5 years old children which needs to be taught everything, and need to learn how they can become more normal and how to suppress better their thoughts so they can pass out. No, so it was content made by autistic people who were just talking what they feel. So, this radical concept of, oh, we can actually let them talk. And it blew my mind because in the same day, I went from, I'm an alien, I've never heard there is anyone in the world who can say anything that relates to me, including, autistic, so-called autistic individuals in movies, the diagnosis of autism in psychology textbooks, treatment intervention for autistic people, which were just non completely foreign to me. So like I went suddenly from, okay, never met anyone in my life who'd give me that simple sense of, okay, I sit down here, I listen to you, and I'm understanding what you're saying. It's not even I like what you're saying. Just I'll sit here and listen and understand, instead of, okay, I'll sit here and tell you how you can think what I want you to think. So I've never found a person like that in my life. Never felt in my life somebody can just sit and listen and try to understand, instead of doing this. Oh, I lecture you about what you actually think, and I lecture you what you actually feel. And I realized that, wait a second, there's actually hundreds, thousands of people who have been alone their entire life. Maybe somebody have discovered this when they were 30, 40, 50, 60, and there's hundreds, thousands of people their entire life have been saying the exact things I've been saying, the exact thing I've been thinking, the exact things I've been feeling. Suddenly I'm not alone. I realized in one day I went from, there is zero people in the world who could just ever sit down and listen, to, oh my goodness, there's hundreds of people who are saying the exact things I've been saying all along. And Why have I never heard of that? Why every single time I told to a neurotypical person, the reaction is, oh, you're basically an alien, you're a freak, you need to, I'm freaking out, change it because if there is somebody like you around, I just cannot function. And like, okay, whatever. I'm a kind person. I'm not a selfish and rigid person, which is one of the thing I made me not relate to autistic people, because I'm like, okay, I'm making this person uncomfortable. So all my life I'm just trying to, keep up with the expectations, and do what I can to not make uncomfortable, which apparently is a lot of things. And autistic people are described as, these very rigid people who have no understanding of social cues, and they kind of selfish and repetitive, and they just want to do their own weird things. And I think this Sheldon Cooper type of character from Big Bang Theory, which is basically a comic relief, or he's kind of annoying, or is somebody who makes you pity him. So it's not like a human, it's like, oh, it's either a robot or a child, or something like that. And of course it's something that nobody can relate to. It's not a human character, it's like just a plot device, basically. And uh, and it turns out that, yeah, we are pro device for the people. So anyway, the starting point is this false consciousness theory, and this is exactly the sort of impact it has in completely silencing an entire community, and actually creating a big disconnection, because the whole I came to realize that the whole reason, nothing related to, no information I ever had in my whole life about autistic disorder or autistic spectrum was correct. It was just something entirely based on false consciousness like theories, and it was based on completely ignoring, belittling, and misrepresenting anything that the autistic people have been saying, because this thing is not, it's not new. The concept of autistic masking has been around for decades, I found out. And it was something that's really very slowly reaching mainstream. It's not mainstream psychology. It's the default interventions for autism, treatment, description, prevention, cure, are all based on psychologists whose work is deliberately taking this Freudian attitude of, oh, I'm so mighty, and this armchair theorist attitude, oh, I'm so mighty, I'll sit here and make a theory about what autistic people are like and how to cure them, so I can enhance my status and money in the psychological community. And I can't really be bothered about ever sitting down and trying to understand why the autistic person is saying certain things, why they behave in a certain way, what they are saying, and or even how they are. And that's how what we why we ended up with two completely different descriptions. And I've been finding out later on, there is, tons of autistic people who have feel the same. Like, there's no, I'm not autistic, this doesn't represent me, it just feels completely off. And it turns out that the people creating this system of diagnosis, intervention, treatment have been told all along by the autistic people that, no, this is not me, this is not representing me, this is like completely off. And they're like, well, we don't care, because we are good mainstream false consciousness psychology. It's not about listening what you say, it's about what makes us feel good and mighty, and how great we are at reading people and analyzing them and helping them. So if you're not doing your social role play work well of patting me on my head or my shoulder and telling me how much of a great psychologist and mighty writer I am and how I should be praised by my peers, you're just doing your job in a shitty way, so it's your problem really. So yeah, that's kind of how the concept of false psychology, which is a very huge problem we are having in psychology right now, and in general, it doesn't have to do, as I say, only with autistic people. It's something that's very generalized, and it's something I've been writing about in my book, in my thesis, before even figuring out I'm autistic. But it's actually something that impacts very deeply the whole autistic community.